important thing.
My description of both sides of it, what currently, like our rounds, I think we're one of those low ones, I know we push it out low, is that the very last block, so the last half a second of our 6 seconds of signing, we're only going to spend a few milliseconds processing transactions, the first ones that we can, shove it into a block and shove it to the next block producer to make sure that when it gets there, it doesn't get forked out because of some latency between the two. The other answer is if you're at 20% and it's just not cutting it, or even if you're at 40% and maybe in the minus 100 there, you have the potential for getting all the transactions in, telling everybody that they were signed, sending it down the line, it not getting there in time, and it triggering a fork for the entire network. All these little micro forks you'll see. Yeah. So the answer is make sure it gets there, even if it's a little bit shorter. The user experience.
Sorry, well, it's slight misunderstanding. I mean, in general, from the customer perspective, as our users that use WAX, for example, APIs, products that based on WAX, how they are impacted at this moment. Is this an issue that might become an issue in the future, or we are not able to process everything as expected and deliver the necessary SLA for the customers? Well, customers meaning our users of WAX.
So it is a huge UX flaw, and it should actually never happen that you submit the transaction to a node and you get positive confirmation, and then you don't find your transaction made it on chain. So that's really bad.
But from improvement perspective, as far as I remember, version Node.js version 4 and later are expected to include the functionalities, as far as I remember, which can resubmit the transaction which was submitted into a certain API. Isn't this better to actually push users to actually use this functionality, since we will be upgrading anyway?
Yeah, but still user doesn't receive what he expected. Mm-hmm. So you want
the
to
user experience that you're trying to avoid is a micro fork. Mm-hmm. Because yes, in your scenario, you would check and see that the transaction didn't make it. But the ripple effects that micro forks cause to layer 2 solutions, and just logistically thinking everything's progressing forward, a fork and rolling back and then trying to catch back up is always way worse, in my opinion, as a user experience, definitely as an operator, and just functionally from a node level. So that's why we make sure the biggest problem we have is the last block getting to the next block producer on time. And the way you help tweak that, because I can't control how long it takes for my connection to get to Rio or Bounty Block or Sweden or whatever. I mean, we streamline it and optimize it as much as we can, but eventually you get to the point you say, if I do 20% effort, which is to say, I think I get like 9 transactions or 8 transactions into a block instead of getting 40. That just roll to the next block a half a second later at the next BP that get picked up, scooped up, no micro forks, no transactions didn't hit the chain. It's done. Does that make sense?
Yeah. In the past, we also had with like minor issues like this, we had an avalanche of greater issues to resolve, then be it fork handling not happening correctly on Iberian or Atomic assets, for example. So that leads to cost and potential other issues also, which is something we can just prevent by addressing those issues when they are small and don't cause any more ripples. So
may I say, I do not want to interrupt anyone, but
yeah, share your view.
Yeah, I have a really limited amount of knowledge from the perspective of developer, but from the perspective of user of products that are based on wax, the biggest issue that I experienced throughout, I think, 3 years of using wax was spamming the network with deferred transaction, which was, I think, which is in the middle of resolving. Basically, we just get rid of deferred transaction. If I understand correctly, this is the direction that Wax will choose as an antelope fork. Is this correct? We will get rid of deferred transactions because they are not really good for us in general.
I can say this is that at the current status of the way the plans are going, the 5.0 code is expected to completely remove deferred transactions.
Okay.
So unless there's any major deviation either in that court or Wax's court, it's a pretty easy answer, I think. We're doing a lot of testing. It is amazing to see how many people might still be using deferred transactions. So great point.
But
go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to continue. I have another point, and I just will ask to maybe add something if I'm missing. So this is one point which is kind of the major issue for us, which allows to spam and do denial of service of the network. So if we get rid of it, we basically eliminate the major issue which we were suffering and are suffering from it up until now, I would guess. But no such major issues happened since, I guess, June, but whatever. We will basically eliminating this problem if we upgrade the whole network to latest code base. Next issue is missing transactions from, if you submit transaction, it's sometimes missing, as we discussed, as Michael outlined previously. So basically, this is the second biggest problem that I see as a user, Wax user. And this is a problem which cannot be fixed that, I would say easily, as getting rid of some part of functionality. So yeah, this is, from my perspective, the general issue which must be fixed one way or another by fixing the overall process of configuring block producers or the overall infrastructure improvements in block producing network. But this is really, really big issue. Yeah, I agree. And I don't know what other issues are that big that might actually impact the user of Wax. And I would like to hear if there are any like this, so we can address them.
Okay, noted. I will add this to the agenda for the next roundtable, where we will focus a little bit more on what you just mentioned. And I'd love to have someone on board that is very knowledgeable with the 5.0 code base and can guide us through a few of the plan changes. That would be wonderful. And we have like 2 weeks of preparation for this. So I'd invite anyone here to pick up on the changes we can expect with the 5.0 upgrade. But sure. Okay. So I'm concluding it right here because we got a few other topics to talk through, but definitely something I'm looking at that I don't like is, for example, an average load transaction rate and some other stats that seem to just be not it looks like some issues on some guilds that are not aligned with others, and we're just curious to find out what could cause those issues. So that's the state of the network health for now. We'll probably have an open forum at the end of the call where we can also just step into this issue again. But I want to also talk about the guidelines. We want to talk about the guidelines 5.3, which are in preparation, and those guidelines will have some updates on topics and also some considerations for having more meaningful metrics to evaluate a guild's value in a network. But let's start with what we have put into draft for 5.3. So what we are very clear about is we want to make HTTPS mandatory on APIs. So we've seen issues with that in the past. We are undecided if it will be like a requirement or if it will be something in the TechOps criteria or a penalty. But yeah, we want to address the issues we have seen in the past. Also, that's probably for later. We want to introduce a requirement for guild for producers and APIs to be running on 404. Possibly also coupled with a penalty because we want that sorted. And the score threshold has moved up slightly from 120 to 125, and this in 5.2 also already. There might be another adjustment to this. But going back to the agenda,
I have a question on that, by the way.
Yeah, sure.
What is an API node there?
Let me fix it. On question mark nodes, like producers on API nodes is the public.
Because you have a lot of different ones. So I guess you mean the chain APIs.
Well, you got
the push, the transaction.
You also got a peer. Like I suppose you say version 404 on all Leap nodes.
There are potentially something that is causing issues with 404, but we have not been able to verify it. But there are some nodes that are behaving strange. We have degraded 2 of them just to make sure that they will operate. In the meantime, we have not been able to verify it yet. Just saying, it might be too early to enforce it. It seems stable for most cases, though.
Sorry. Is this related to history as it was previously, or the usual API chain APIs?
API chain producer, I think. In case
it doesn't matter. Any instance of usage of nodes have this issue was 404. Is this correct?
So then I think there needs to happen a little clarification if everyone can do this in time due to version incompatibilities, for example, Hyperion Atomic Assets. Mm-hmm. So we need to clarify on that. And also, it feels like we should wait for the feedback on those issues on nodes that Anders just mentioned.
And this is to make sure that there are a few of the new API calls available. Yes.
Yes, mainly the get transaction status, I think.
Yeah, so that should probably be specified there as well.
Well, that's what I was saying. Maybe it's the public ones, because I think what Pavel was saying was, is it all of them, or is it just the ones like GLC, or the people would use? And if the end game is to be able to get those additional endpoints, that's what's more important, is the public one. Then that allows you to still use internal 3.0 or 3.1, right? Because 3.2 did make some big changes, but 3.1, you still have an older version that works. So some people may use that internally. But if you're going to say like protocol activate or 5.0 type of thing, that's where you say all of them need to be required. So that's why distinguishing between what's the end game, right? I mean, what you're providing, I think, from previous conversations, is these new transaction endpoints, right? So that's really just the public ones. It doesn't matter if we're running internal nodes. Yeah. That's up to us. But is that, when you say all, that's going to be the first question back is, whoa, what about my snapshot nodes? I'm going to run snapshot on the oldest version until absolutely possible. because we always want to be as backwards compatible as possible. That makes sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. But well, you may as well run any of older Wax versions for internal use or for your private use. But whatever we evaluate is public facing.
That should be specified, though.
Correct. That's what I say. That would make it a lot easier. That's why I give that explanation. Is I know that's, I think, your end game and the producer, which is obviously not public, but it's the public peering and the public APIs to have the P2P abilities, the subjective billing options, to have the new endpoint APIs. But what you do behind the curtain at this point is still up to you, is I think the end game of that statement.
Yeah, I appreciate the feedback very much, guys. Which also leads to my follow-up question to you. We are having backups of several things. Do you think those backups will break at any point if we achieve those major upgrades in software?
What backups?
I personally do not see any issues with upgrading backup servers in general and versions that are deployed on backup servers. But well, that's major issue is backwards compatibility. So as Michael mentioned, the main reason to keep older versions on backup servers is just basically backward compatibility with older nodes. That's
for example, and it's not a hang up, it just is fresh in my mind. I was upgrading some nodes recently to the latest version of 3 and 4 and found that Hyperion, I had forgotten that the indexer was still a 3 or whatever old version. And as soon as I went to the new 4.0 version, it started getting really, really mad at me. And that means that ship changed and people were still running like 3.1.0, which was before that change, or 3.0. So the point is that there might still be, now they're on a ticking time bomb, granted, right? But the point is that if you isolate your service nodes, fine, do whatever. Our end game is to get the public ones going. That might be more targeted for it. Backup nodes, do whatever you want to do. I suggest, I can tell you personally, I've got about 150 instances of 404, and it's pretty stable. Anything I break on, it's normally me.
Okay. How can we improve your concerns, Anders? How could that look like in your eyes? So,
which of the concerns?
For breaking your nodes.
You should, as long as you specify the public nodes, then it's fine, as most seem to be working. But if we notice an issue, it should not be penalized by downgrading, as long as there's a good argument for why, I think. Then it defeats the system, in my opinion. It shouldn't be to push an update for an update's sake. It should be for a reason, and there might be reasons that are more valid for not doing that, and that should still be a valid concern.
Got it. So be more sensible with the upgrade and maybe introduce something like a grace period alongside it. Okay, I think...
And specify public nodes.
And specify public nodes. I just added it to the notes. We are going to talk in the OIG about it and also inform you if this updates or makes it into the guidelines.
Yeah, sorry. I hope this is not the last discussion about improvements for infrastructure requirements, etc., etc. So we will be developing this conversation in the future meetings, right?
Sure, that's how it's planned. So the last few roundtables acted like a good inspirational source for us to see where your concerns are, and we'd like to have this going forward and have you in this discussion. It would be good if we would find a way to document your proposals or ideas, ideally somewhere on GitHub, share it with other guilds, and then be able to discuss it without restarting every time in the conversation. So your any input to the guidelines is highly appreciated. So we have some experience in block producing, namely Joseph, but I, for example, I'm not the most experienced block producer operator.
Is feedback now or later?
Feedback now or later? Yeah, feedback always now. Let's push it to the open forum. Once I've done the survey on this on those 3 topics here, we can pick up on this again. So any feedback is appreciated, always. Okay, then some of you guys are hosting backups. Do you have any input for or any feedback for the current rating system for backups at the moment? And do you also think that anything is missing? Should we add something? Is the score justified? And what is the interval you would expect someone to update his backups so that you get the latest data?
Well, from my perspective, I would chase the highest, the lowest interval. The lowest is the frequency. The higher the frequency, the more frequent the backups are. So the more recent the backups are. So basically, as for the end users of backup service, it's always better to have the latest snapshot of basically any system in order to swiftly and quickly and more comfortably deploy the infrastructure for one person, for one's requirements as soon as possible. That's the general idea of actually having the snapshot service in general.
The question.
That's my opinion.
The question, so we had an open discussion how much we require guilds, so how often we require guilds to provide these snapshots to score points from them. Because originally we said there should be 1 snapshot a week for them to score, and then realized
it took a week to copy it to the server.
Yeah, exactly. So we realized that's not viable for all the snapshots. And then we have the question of data persistence. So how long do we have to store the snapshots? So can somebody just have 1 snapshot or just provide 2 snapshots in parallel? How far back should it go? So that's why we're asking, because in the end we have, I think we're right now in between for some snapshots, especially the full blocks, 2 to 4 weeks, somewhere in that range. So we just want to align with the guilds. And if we have multiple guilds that all do the snapshots and we have that way, we essentially always have one snapshot that's rather fresh compared to the others. So that's the idea there.
Well, I would agree also that retention is also important indicator, I would say, but well, we should chase for better, and everyone should either provide the most fresh or the most comfortable way to actually deploy the latest snapshot. I would say, have the golden middle between the retention and actually providing the most recent snapshot. So basically, it's up to I know a lot of factors actually define this, but the major factor for this is actually backup infrastructure, which gets more expensive if you increase the retention as well as you try to implement the most fresh snapshots as possible. So, that depends.
All right. So, I mean, the term snapshot's probably not the best term for it. Some of them are actually snapshots. and others are just backups of what it is, unless you're taking a ZFS snapshot. Not everybody uses ZFS. I can tell you the state history is freaking unwieldy, man. That thing is like 8 terabytes archived because it doesn't compress.
Yeah.
That thing, I've been backing state history up once every 6 months.
Yeah.
And I do block slog once a month, and I do normal snapshot every single day for Leap and Nodius, and I do a new snapshot every single day for Elasticsearch. Atomic assets I do once a month as well. The unwieldy ones are going to be block slog and state history folder. Those two together are over 10 terabytes, even when they're archived.
I was going to say,
and that's not something you can do once a week even. That's just like, it's just insane.
Yeah. On the flip side, the easiest one, and one you probably is the most highly used, needs to be the most diverse and whatever, is the one you just added, is the daily. I mean, we do hourly snapshots and then
normal snapshots. Perfect.
Correct. And that's the term. When I think snapshot, I think a chain snapshot, which is completely not what any of that other stuff is. That's way more the backup and the terabytes and monstrosities that you're talking about. It is definitely important. And it doesn't even, I don't think it needs to, I mean, it's easy to create snapshots. I think somebody even wrote a system to build a system to create snapshots and publish them for you. But it is how you have the ability to take the full blocks log or the state history or any of that, and be able to fix it, or the rest of the nodes really be able, because they don't ever run their own backups. And,
you see the state history. The state history is never provided as a public service. All right, it's always for yourself. The blocks log, you could argue, it is a public service because you need to provide it as a seeding peer. Right? State history is more like an internal thing. Like, and because you can always easily spin up a state history server, you can spin up a normal API from a normal Nodius snapshot, no problem.
Well,
okay.
I just want to add, well, while you are correct, Ross, but it is really rarely necessary to have full state history. So basically,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. You don't need it. If you need access to state history, you can spin it up with a normal Nodius snapshot. Boom, and you've got state history in an hour, and you can start pulling from there.
What's almost more important is having like a chain snapshot to say, fine, you want to go back 3 months to when you actually do need the state history data, is you can always shotgun it to us. And that's where the retention comes in, is like, even I go back to 2019 and 20 on nations backups because I don't even have the snapshots. I didn't have that system survive until now. So the retention and the ability, and like, it was crazy. The IBC, because of this crazy math, made you go back like 100 million blocks or something like that. So even though you're launching a service, it may not always be right now. Firehose is another big one where you would go back.
Michael,
so, go ahead.
May I add? Well, I just want to complete my thought regarding state history. While most of the people don't need the full state history, some services still need it. For example, like exchanges, wallet providers, etc., etc. So for them, I think it's necessary. And well, it's kind of hard to tell which is more important. For the end user, which just needs to have his own state history for I don't know, for actions, for tracking actions, for example, he doesn't need full history. He just needs latest actions, etc. And other way for exchange providers, they have to have full history, and
but they have to run it themselves. So.
Exactly, they should not use a snapshot.
Yeah,
and running state history as a public service. No, we've actually been on this road. The thing just falls over when it has, you know.
No, I don't mean the public service. I mean they have to have it for internal usage.
but then they should be doing it themselves then, you know.
And
The state
retention is
history,
very important on the blocks log because you might want to restart from a previous date.
Yes.
So frequency might not be the most important because you might want it from an early stage. There is something that you need to re-index from that time. Well, you can do it if you have a full block log later as well, but
give me an idea how that retention could look like for the full blocks log.
I'm not
Like,
sure it should be
would you
black and white.
but it can't be. Look, blocks log can be pruned, right? As long as you've got a current one, you can print it back to wherever. So the retention's not so important. Same thing with the state history. Retention's not so important. The most important retention you've got is the actual Node.js snapshot of the chain database. That is the most important one out of all of them.
And on frequency.
So frequency and retention of those. Those are the most important ones. The blocks log, as long as it's current, and the state history, as long as it's current, is all fine. If you got that, as long as it's current, you can make it go back in time, no problem. Yeah.
But another thing that worth considering is, sure, someone has the snapshots, but if they have limited the bandwidth and everything is useless. So just having them is not enough unless it's tested, because I can spin up a node and then limit bandwidth and you can't use my node, but I still have the full points for it.
Yeah.
Hey, to be honest with you, I have trickled an old snapshot from a throttled back server because that was my only option. So even that is still maybe worth it. Anyway, I do agree that providing all of these services is a valuable service. Defining some general metrics, there's probably going to be some edge cases that are throttled and whatnot, but encouraging the teams to provide the diversity and multiple sources, or guess what? Sometimes shit breaks, right? Yeah. Ross is going to tank his atomic or his Elasticsearch snapshotting service, and all hell's going to break loose.
I just want to add that, someone might not agree, but providing the best ways to actually spin up your own WAX infrastructure is good for the overall health of blockchain, because it allows easily for our end users or developers to actually spin up their own reliable infrastructure quickly, as quick as possible. This amount of time really defines whether the developer or user of the blockchain will just get rid of this blockchain or will continue using it, because
But for that you need a chain snapshot, and I think 180 days is stupid, by the way. I think you should save less of them the further away you are. That's how we do it. We still had the snapshots from the first day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, correct.
So
we do a rolling retention, hourly for 2 days, every 3 hours.
We have twice per day currently, and then we reduce it the further back it is. Save space.
Okay, so
because this thing needs to be thought through before you push something that changes how teams have to operate to get this score. It's not a simple thing, and also having the snapshots is very important, but if all the peers don't have full block logs, then it's pretty stupid either way. Then you can only use the blocks backups to get anywhere, and that's a later problem though for the open discussions.
That's a good feedback though. So none of this change here is sure to be applied. It's just taking notes to fine tune this with you guys, so that we can improve the current situation that we find when looking at backups submitted in reports.
I think the first iteration should be a looser one that is easy to achieve. It's not as tight, and start from there, and then kind of don't go for like, okay, you're going to need to have retention of every single snapshot from the beginning of time, and it has to be taken twice a day. Rather start with something really lax. You know?
Yeah, what would help us really is if we defined the base date, for example, where we take a TechOps snapshot, and then when we visit the backup site, we expect like a chain database snapshot that's not older than a day, atomic API that is not older than a week, for example. So that's what would be a heuristic metric for us to evaluate the value of a backup.
So an obvious question then is what happens if you miss 1 day or 2 days, but you have every other day?
Yeah.
Is that really important?
You need some gray area. You need like, okay, I can see you taking backups, right?
Yeah, I don't mind adding a second day to the chain database snapshot. So every
I'll tell you, because if I'm moving stuff around, I feel nothing about just deleting snapshots. Like I've got the ones from the day before, but if I need to cut a few out, whatever, I just do it. I don't hold them, every one of them sacred, you know?
Yeah, true. Good question on this.
Yeah, and the copying, like wherever you back it up, like if you're backing up your blocks log and you're trying to transfer, you know, a couple terabytes, and then you're sitting here, I've got to get it in by 12 o'clock, and I'm watching it copy, and it's just not copying fast enough, you know, it's just...
It takes about 30 minutes actually for the snapshot node process to kick off, generate, compress, and ship it to our snapshot hosting server. So,
and depending on the hardware, it can take longer.
Oh yeah, that's on i9s. Those are dedicated i9s.
You should try archive and send 7 terabytes from Australia to Canada to Germany. It's lovely.
See, I do it over local gigabit and put it on fire. But yeah, I mean, the big data is totally different. I mean, and it's also much less frequently accessed. You know, I mean, I use the backups to spin up my API, you know, Atomic, and don't go back to it. I think it was Weekend, as a matter of fact. You know, I mean, it was like, hey, thanks. I'm glad they had it. They had one of the first ones out there, but I've never had to go back because it doesn't, you know, I've got that non-stuff.
So without being petty or rude, whenever we find out that something braked, we usually also find out that it braked a long while ago and went unnoticed. So usually
it's also hard, just so you know. I mean, it can make you think, just having run a snapshot service, and one of my minions is responsible for monitoring it. It's kind of hard. You can see that it starts generating smaller snapshots, but it's a much more reactionary. It looks like everything's working, the node's fine. It's just something about the process kind of falls down. So
I think it needs some more discussion, maybe, and certainly it needs to be expanded out, and maybe in the group to talk more with everybody else, people that aren't here.
So I just can ask you all to bring on the other BPs by poking them and telling them, hey, there's a roundtable.
Yeah.
Please join. Bring your fellow BP colleagues into this call.
Give them points for it. Bet you they'll show up.
You think that will help?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean that realistically. Same reason I say on snapshots. I mean, it doesn't have to be a lot of points, but hey, just throw a little bit out there, and the people that are trying, they'll try.
Starting with us. We should all get 5 points.
With a multiplier of 9, right?
Yeah.
I think
that's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah,
that's not too bad. If you manage to join 2 or 3 roundtables in those 6 weeks, you qualify for 0.5 points or something.
Absolutely.
It would be the same as we had in the past.
Don't add controversy to it. I'm happy to see it going forward, but no, for the sake of the argument, no.
People would just join and sit idle. The same we had it when we were giving out points for holding meetups. When people would just hold meetups with giveaways, and then they would have like 20, 30 people waiting to get a free NFT and not doing anything. So not a good idea to give points. It was just clutter everything with people that don't contribute.
Yeah, I don't know how you get around that. because some people just don't talk, and they aren't me. And I mean, it's unfair to
that's the antithesis of you, Mike.
that understanding that there are those people, but they do pay attention and get good knowledge, right? You know, but then there's other people that, they're just there to.
Okay, wait, we got to get back to it. Let's get back to it.
Let's get back to it. Yeah, we are currently working the onboarding for new guilds and probably get. Yeah, we are still very undecided what to do with Keybase overall, and we'd like to improve the application process. So if you find to have any good ideas for this, please share them with us. And that's where I also want to announce we want to announce the new guild Wombat with a completely separate TechOps infrastructure. And also a member of Wombat is here with us today, Dimitri. He's in charge
Hello.
of, hey. He's in charge of TechOps at our newest guild. So let's welcome him. And if you have anything urgent to address, that's the right time.
Nothing really. I just wanted to join now, and I will turn on the camera as well to just put the face in front of the name. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Dimitri, or Dimi. Most people call me Dimi. I'm in all the Telegram channels. My handle is Goof, as in GOOOFF. In Telegram, I'm in Keybase as well. I wrote a message there, so happy to be around. I will be responsible for running the infrastructure. There are still quite a few things. Well, I had a bit of experience already. We have our own privately running mainnet Wax API nodes for ourselves for a few months already. But yeah, it's the first time for us to run the block producing infrastructure. So there is still a lot that I don't know. In addition to that, as you probably know, we now own bits and pieces of the PingGG infrastructure, and we're still to figure out how we deal with that. It is a little bit of a mess, as you can imagine, with the acquisition. But luckily, we also have a DevOps person from PingGG joining us. He's now on vacation. He's back next week. So we will start figuring out together what we keep, what we let go, what will be the final single setup out of what we have from both sides. And hopefully do some good service for the network. So yeah, hello.
Hey, thanks for the introduction. Wonderful. And great to have you here also.
Welcome to the party, man.
Thank you.
Okay, and I think that's where we can. That's a good question also in Cloud Null. We haven't decided on this yet, but as you may find in the current report for Wombat, we didn't carry over the points for Atomic Hub yet, and we didn't decide on an exact plan for this, but I will keep this question in mind, and hopefully I'll update you once we have a decision on this.
Oh, they are not going to inherit the points for Atomic Assets that far. We agreed already, because Atomic Assets is, unless they pick up development and going further, but Atomic Assets has been essentially been open sourced and is MIT and is controlled by all the guilds. So unless they start going in with a leading role in developing the standard further, that might change. But as of now, they won't be getting the points for Atomic Assets. I think it's also not part of the insolvency mess of PingGG they bought.
Yeah, probably, but things like Atomic Hub as a product, which is then maintained and further improved,
Yes.
is something to consider for the score sheet. So Atomic Assets.
Yeah.
The
So
atomic
far, we
market
don't have
context.
any out of the PingGG projects in the submission sheet. They're all both projects and initiatives are all Spielworks related up until now. I guess with the next submission, with the next cycle, that will change. But yeah, we'll still have to figure it out. I guess together with Kiefer, we can look into like how we what we add to the submission. But yeah, we have inherited many of the projects, Atomic Hub being one of them, obviously, and we will be developing them further and keeping them alive. So some of them will get into the further submissions.
Sure, great. I think that sums up the question. So let's conclude the recording for now.
I have 2 questions in the open forum, though.
Okay, go for it.
Include Null mentioned the Atomic API versions and the question why that is not enforced, or rather it should be enforced so they are updated.
That's a good one. For clarification, I added it already to the guidelines template 5.3. Do you have any further concern to share? Or
Not on that one, and the second one is just there is a requirement to have a public-facing peer, but there's not a requirement to have a full history one. There are ways to actually request blocks from far away from public peers, so you can actually test to make sure that they have them. And that, like, if guilds don't supply a peer with full block log and everything, then there is no way for anyone else to actually replay the chain, and that would be a really bad state for a blockchain to be in, and probably as important as the snapshots that are available is to have peers that you can actually use.
And this is actually even outside of my expertise, but an expansion on the peer-to-peer. I've seen the devs starting to use peer-to-peer sync and listening and whatever as a raw way, instead of like having to get a state history node that's feeding and whatever. And I don't even know all the ways they're doing it, but in my opinion, it explains why my peer-to-peer traffic is so heavy and, you know, whatever. But
Yeah.
and maybe some
It's
of the
the
devs
most
on here
heavy
could speak a little more
bandwidth
on
we
that.
have, for sure.
It's insane.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
I've got,
insane.
I mean, about 250 both ways just for the wax peers.
We have some average, some servers of 500 megabit per second on average bandwidth load on the peer.
I'm half the man Anders is, but the point is that, but it's been increasing and it's heavy, obviously. But
yeah, because if we are, like, I'm not saying that is the case, but let's say that we are the only one that has the full history. I'm 100% sure that's not the case. There are more of them. Then every node that want to replay will request it from us. And if we go down or we are not up, that would be really bad.
But yes, it's not even just about the old school history, because that was always my original thought, but even they're starting to adapt, and it's a very interesting strategy is Null says, yeah, so listening to new blocks, I thought that people may even be going back, but like I always had the idea of, you know, some of my peers are very light and they'll just trim the logs, you know, to run on a 1 terabyte, because I mean, it fills up, drives quick, right? So now knowing that people are relying on that peer-to-peer, it definitely is more important. And yes, you really should. Now, just so you know, that requires you hosting a 3.3 terabyte file. So that grows, I don't know, 10, 15 gigs a day. Just to give you a perspective.
That's just one block log snapshot, though.
Oh, the snapshots are
one block log copy.
Yeah,
correct. One copy, correct, for everyone. So like everyone, and I've been throwing 8 and 16 terabyte drives in all of my APIs and all of my peer-to-peers to finally bring them up, because my primaries had them all, but then my backups were just trimmed nodes. Well, when you fell to the backup, you weren't able to get anything more than whatever.
Hey, I've got an article on ZFS deduplication. Works great. for that block slug.
You
Works
know what?
great.
Sneaker network's great for me. I just slap a drive in, run up the road, and go move it from one to the other. But the point is that it is very important to have it for the API. It's very important to have it for the peer-to-peer, even more so now than just syncing, because it's ridiculous to sync the chain. But people are using it to avoid the ship. Anyway, so all that being said, that I do also want to, on the first point, the atomic version, yes, and of course I can claim I'm guilty. It's not the latest because I don't want to upset the apple cart. It's so critical to my infrastructure, and everybody uses it. It's working. Damn, okay, you're right. I do need to do an update. But more importantly, some of the people I talk to find that the public ones, and I don't know which ones, I don't know all of them, don't always support all the endpoints. There's atomic assets, there's atomic market, and then there's atomic tools, I think maybe.
Tools, yeah.
And market is pretty intense because people are just spamming, you know, brrr, whatever. So if you cut out market, it obviously is a hell of a lot easier. Or if you're like me, I just forgot to route the namespace and it just didn't work on some of my proxies. But not providing market is a different experience if you, all atomic APIs are not the same. I'm not 100% sure what features might be missing in the newer ones. I haven't heard of any, but that doesn't mean I'm not oblivious to them. But I do know that just in routing, it was running, but I didn't have it exposed, and people picked up because they expect it to be there or not there. So maybe in the BP JSON, there needs to be further clarification.
May I ask why, well, not why, what are the features that, well, 1-year-old Atomic Assets API lacks comparing to the current one?
I couldn't speak on that. I got to feel like there
that's
were,
why I'm asking, yeah.
And I didn't ever hear of anything. None of the issues that I had addressed it. I mean, I don't know. I was a couple versions back, I think, but definitely hasn't been high on my priority list. I did just recently upgrade one to fix another issue on another chain. Got 21. So
Include Null just wrote that 1.3.18 had a new output for account API. I guess they differ in some output.
Okay. That's great reason. Thank you.
But that upgrade process, I don't know. Does anybody know recently, is it a big one or are they, you know, those later ones? Because I know sometimes it can take hours for those.
I think I put my experience going to 20. It's in the channel. It took like 30 minutes, I think. But I don't know what 21 is. Usually before I would have done an upgrade, I would ping one of the guys, you know, one of the pink guys. So I don't know now. I can see 21 is the new one. I'm seeing it on the dash, but yeah, it would be a little bit scary to just haphazardly go at it unless you could talk to the guys and
just to
I have had to
include
Nulls on a different chain.
He says that the last two versions are fixing slow queries and are optimizations. So we've had my listeners want to know.
So is that the go ahead, Anders? You said it was great to do this. Thank you. I'm going to do it.
Actually,
I'm forwarding his questions from the chat.
If you if you scroll the Git log from one version or another, you will see there's a lot of database structure changes. So it might be really hard to actually implement that properly in time, I would say. So I would put this requirement to 5.4 as a safe date. But that's from my perspective. Maybe someone has different opinion.
I'll note that concern.
I would, you know, what they call throw your hat in the ring on it. You know, be like, hey guys, we're starting to put more focus on maybe the breakdown of the different endpoints and what version is the, you know, most current version. If it's not getting developed, that makes it a lot easier to stay at this version. But yeah, doing it quickly, it might take some teams a lot to upgrade their whole infrastructure. And remember, I mean, this to us is probably the most heavily utilized layer 2 of any layer 2, even history.
So in case you're trying out and you want to test it, just give us a short heads up. And
I
we
plan on
can-
kicking one off on one of my backups and just trying to see. I mean, knowing it's got some new endpoints and some of those queries do crush those things. So I'm excited to see. The upgrade went from an old version to a new version 21 on another smaller chain. So it zipped right through it and seems to be happy, but it's not wax. So I can say that the process went pretty smooth, even if you're a couple versions behind.
All right. So anything else you guys want to talk about? Share? Show the others?
I have one question in relation to Hyperion upgrade. So maybe someone can tell off the top of the head which the latest version is compatible with how should it was the 4 version of NodeOS. So
Yes, it is past the 3.2.
Correct.
So
I would say you should shoot for 3.3.9 dash 7, I think is the latest one. I think that's also merged into main. And do make sure, that was when I learned the issue, is that the parser is actually flipped over to the 3.2. Yeah. From that did change over, and 4.0 will zing you. It'll blow up with bad variant index.
Sorry. Writing 3.3.9 as a requirement is really big requirement. So I would say the minimum compatible version that we need. So basically, not 3.3.9, but 3.3.6, I would say, or 3.3.
What do you? What? I don't understand what you mean.
Some of the version requires re-indexing from the start. So which?
It was fine from 3.3.5.
3.5. I think 5 was.
Taking from 3.3.5, we do not have to re-index if I, for example, upgrade to 3.3.9.
No.
Right. The technical answer, if you have access to the Elasticsearch, is if your indexes are already kind of broken out into chunks of 10 million.
10 million blocks.
The big difference is that by default it'll split them versus it just being all smashed together. So that was the big change many moons ago. I would say, and probably the OIG will say, a lot of the new features are smaller ones, but they're like information that's in the health, and those were added at request of the OIG to help validate, how much history's in it, is it missing any data, and some other, I think, some stats. So. Yeah, and there are some bug fixes, but go to the latest. Don't go to just 3.3.9 because they were definitely bugs.
That's exactly my concern. So I heard, and maybe I misunderstood the requirement discussion. I heard that maybe we have to obligatory upgrade from 3.3.5 to the latest one, but
he does all of the fixes, all the cool fixes that Igor picks up as he goes along. He's doing that all in 3.3.9 at the moment. Correct. So everything you see in the channel there, when it's like, oh, I've got an issue with this little corner case, he does it all in 3.3.9-7 now, right?
Yeah.
So that's where he's doing the fixes. I mean, I've had nodes running on 3.3.5 for a long time, and they upgraded fine to 3.3.7. I think our wax is 3.3.7 at the moment. Some of the other networks we are now running on 3.3.9-7. But if you ever have a question about it, you should pose it inside of the Hyperion channel, because Igor is very aware of the corner cases, because even in his mind, he remembers things, right? So just bring it up with him there.
He's just the single person who develops that. I just don't want to ask stupid questions seriously, because.
Well, if you just put them in the channel, somebody will respond to you. That's actually
if they're easy, I'll answer it.
Thanks for suggestion. Okay, I will take a note.
Yeah. 3.3.9-7 is where all the fun is happening at the moment. Igor's also got some code that he's about to merge into the next one now, where he'll be able to show you the number of queries through an API request, the number of queries per day or something, a day or per week. Because remember, it was like a question last month, and everybody was using their own HA proxies to gather the information. You better get that raw information straight from a Hyperion query now. The code is still in development, though. That'll be coming soon.
Cool. Thank you.
So just for clarification, 335 is okay, or after 335, so 336?
I would say if you were, if you had version 3 and upwards of Node.js. I think the parser 3.2 is the same parser we use now with version 4.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think
it works all the way through.
You'll find that there was a certain, and I think it was 336, it might be 337, that the health response was enhanced to include information you guys use to validate the Hyperion data. So that's why y'all had like a minimum of 336, maybe 337. So
337.
That's a different thing, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be the minimum requirement. You should
you
be
just need
running
a
the
script to
latest.
calculate two other numbers in the health, and you have the same info.
You have the same info, yeah.
The info is already
you can
there.
fake it too for the sake of the argument, but
It's just A minus B, and that's what they are showing.
I'll say
There you go.
running
Yeah,
lots and lots and
336.
lots. Correct. Lots and lots and lots of these things. There wasn't a lot of difference between 337 and 339. It was a lot of more, they found queries that were kind of broken or edge cases, or like get health started kind of causing some problems. So they're more quality of life, but there's not really much difference if you're coming from 3.5. As long as you're over the 3.5 hump and your indexes are right, you can keep it on 3.5 and you could probably get by. I would probably suggest, just from my opinion, having run a lot of them, 397, you might as well go there. And there's probably more coming. It's a constant thing.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for the input, guys. I added it to the plan changes or feedback discussions we are having. So don't consider any of that final. It's just a first survey, and then we should discuss those points exactly on the next roundtable and consent to a possible change. But what's happening today, the feedback we received for this is very nice to see and to hear. So many things we can learn hanging around here with you guys, and you sharing the experience. Totally love it.
I have to go.
Should I keep the recording?
It's past my bedtime.
Yes, please, Anders.